Yo, Big D here. It's Dylan's History of Sports, and I'm talking about how tornadoes affected sports. I'm combining my passion for sports with one of my other passions, weather, on the Gardner Shop Productions Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube pages where we talk sports and tornadoes. It's May, and generally May's the season of tornadoes, and I'm going to twist up everything tonight. So, everyone knows that I love sports, but everybody knows I love weather, and usually when I talk weather, it's hurricanes. But, I figured early May, when tornado season across the West, and everywhere else, and I figured, why not do a show about how tornadoes affected sports? Because tornadoes have impacted sports. Now, we know a tornado rotating column of air can be big. In fact, I have a picture of what a tornado is. This picture is from the 1999 Moore tornado. 27 years ago yesterday. Yeah, pretty historical week in terms of tornadoes, with this tornado that hit Moore, and today is the 19th anniversary of the Greensboro, Kansas tornado, which was the first EF5, and I'll go into both of those tornadoes in greater detail because, usually you think, well, how does a tornado hit a sports venue? Well, tornadoes will hit anything. And we have seen tornadoes hit sports venues. 1998. Nashville, Tennessee. Yes, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm not sure anybody thought that a tornado could hit a major metropolitan area. Well, in 1998, Mother Nature sure proved that wrong when a deadly tornado rolled its way through downtown Nashville, Tennessee. See, now I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. What's going on? The tornado actually hit where the Tennessee Titans were building their new stadium. The Tennessee Titans were building a new stadium, and the tornado actually damaged where the stadium was being built. So, Nashville tornado ended up being a pretty severe tornado. I think one person died. There were injuries, millions of dollars lost. But what that tornado showed is that tornadoes can hit anywhere, any place, anytime. It could be the middle of nowhere or downtown of a major city. And I think what it also shows is that sports venues are just a dot on the map. I mean, tornadoes can do whatever they want. And sports venues, particularly in the path, stand little chance of survival. So, 1 year later, 1999, another major U.S. city in the path of a tornado, this time Salt Lake City, Utah. This time the Delta Center is in the path of a tornado, and the tornado ended up damaging the roof. I mean, who would think that a tornado could hit downtown Nashville and downtown Salt Lake City within 16 months? Well, that happened, and Salt Lake City, you probably don't. Probably Salt Lake City is not the number one city in terms of tornadoes. You would think more Oklahoma City. You would think more Dallas or Topeka, one of those cities in Kansas, maybe St. Louis, maybe Chicago, someplace Alabama. But Salt Lake City is not number one in terms of tornadoes. And I think what it showed is that these puppies can surprise people. And ended up being a pretty significant 20. I think one or two people died from the tornado damage. But I think the tornado ended up being F1 rated. So I mean, it wasn't just a baby tornado. It was actually a decent sized tornado for Salt Lake City. And I mean, for a city that's used to seeing snow, I'm not sure tornadoes would have been in number one in terms of weather events for 1999. I mean, there've been tornadoes in weird places. I remember seeing videos of a tornado hitting Pikes Peak. And, what if a tornado hit LA for all we know? I mean, there've been tropical systems, there've been wildfires, earthquakes? Why not a tornado in LA? I'm kidding, of course, but tornado in Utah, that is quite synonymous. And freaky in a way that a tornado would hit Utah. Well, a few years later, 2005, a year that will go down, a couple year stretch that will go in infamy in terms of hurricanes hitting the U.S. 4 major storms in 2004 hitting Florida, and then 2005, which broke all the rules, with Dennis, Katrina, Rita, Wilma. And guess what? A tornado hit Atlanta Motor Speedway. Very significant tornado. It actually caused quite a bit of damage. And this was in like July or August. I mean, it caused a lot of damage. And Atlanta was going to host a race in the Chase that year. And they were questioning whether or not the track would be repaired in time for that weekend. And luckily, the track was prepared, but there was quite a bit of damage to the racetrack. Nothing that stopped the race from happening, more like to the grandstands and everything around the speedway. I think the track itself was okay. But just freaky that tornadoes. It was because we remember 2024 and Hurricane Milton produced several tornadoes, including some EF3s throughout Florida. It was freaky. Freaky that tornadoes could be EF2, EF3. I remember Hurricane Ivan producing EF2, EF3 tornadoes, including a deadly tornado that hit Blountstown, which is like north of Panama City. If anybody knows what Panama City is, Blountstown's like 60 miles north. And there was a big tornado that hit Blountstown during Hurricane Ivan in 2004. Ended up causing quite a bit of damage, and just one of those crazy scenarios with wind shear, because hurricanes hate wind shear, but tornadoes love wind shear because that wind shear leads to more tornado development. We saw it in Ivan, we saw it in Milton, and obviously we saw it with Atlanta Motor Speedway. And I've been to Atlanta Motor Speedway, not since it was repaved and the banking increased. Now it's a super speedway race, but the oil land back in like 2006, 2007. So crazy how tornadoes would hit racetracks. So, and something we wouldn't think, something you wouldn't think. The only I mean, and then a few years later, 2008, probably the most infamous um, example of a tornado hitting a major venue with thousands of people was the craziest conference basketball tournament in college basketball history. At 2008 SEC tournament, game was between. I have to remember this because I was watching this on television. It was the quarterfinal game between Alabama and Mississippi State, and it was a great game. It was going back and forth, and Mississippi State was up 3, and Alabama's Mikael Riley got the ball and made a buzzer beater that sent the game into overtime. And why that shot matters, literally a couple minutes into overtime, a tornado, I think it was like an EF2 tornado, goes over the Georgia Dome and tore off pieces of the roof, tore off all kinds of pieces. I mean, I remember Tim Brando even mentioned that there could be a tornado, and the Raycom sports team, the sports production crew, was actually in an 18-wheeler doing the game, and that truck was hit by a tornado with like winds 130, 140 miles an hour. Oh, and it's to this day maybe the craziest scene I've ever seen because this was in the middle of a conference basketball tournament. And funny thing, the then SC Commissioner Mike Slive was in Indianapolis, being the NCAA men's basketball committee. So Slive wasn't even in Atlanta; he was in Indy for the selection that would have been done on Sunday. So the game was stopped because literally a tornado hit the dome, and everybody wondered what the heck happened. Mom, I'm doing a show. Mom's trying to cause the next tornado. And so the game was stopped for like better part of an hour. And when the game resumed, Alabama, I think it was Alonzo G, went to the line for fun in the 1-on-1, and of course he missed. And the game was decided late, and Alabama, with like 0.5 second, literally 0.5 of a second left, got an open shot that would have won the game at the end. Would have won the game in overtime. And so Mississippi State advances. But the crazy thing is, if Mikael Riley didn't make that buzzer beater, there could have been thousands of people leaving the Georgia Dome in the middle of with a tornado literally hitting downtown Atlanta. The craziest thing of the night might have been thousands of people leaving the Georgia Dome with an EF2 tornado going into downtown Atlanta. If that happens, chaos, 1,000 people would have been in danger, and a humanitarian crisis that maybe would have been tragic. Because when you go to a Georgia Dome or what indoor venue, guess what you're not worried about? The weather. I bet you this. nobody cared about the weather in the Georgia Dome that night. They wanted to see SEC basketball. They didn't care about the weather, even though there was a chance of severe weather. Guess what? Nobody cares. And so, to this day, Mikael Riley is a hero. And if anybody's seen the ESPN 30 for 30, I think it's called Miracle 3. That shot saved a lot of lives that night. And so, now the fun part begins. Because there was another game that was going to take place that night, Georgia and Kentucky. But by the time Alabama Mississippi State finished, there was more severe weather going to hit Atlanta, and more engineers came to the dome and realized, you know what, we can't play the game here. There's too much damage, and what if a piece of debris came and hit a fan? Then guess what? Somebody's going to get sued, and so now the SEC's got a problem because 3 quarterfinal games have been played. But what happens with Georgia and Kentucky? Because you can't have a conference tournament with just 3 semifinalists. And so, Georgia was bad that year. But Kentucky, obviously, with the tradition, SEC lineage, was probably going to end up having to make a decision. And that decision was simple. Play 2 games in 1 day. And so, for the only time I can remember in college basketball history, my memory goes back a long time. Trust me, I'm not Bill Raftery. I don't have those onions, but the Georgia-Kentucky game was going to be played Saturday at noon. But wait. Wait. Could the game have been played in the Georgia Dome? Not exactly. The building was too damaged from the tornado, and logistics would have made it impossible to repair the damage in time for the game. So guess what? The SEC moved the tournament. But where? Because the plan B would have been Phillips Arena, but I think there was an event there the following night. So guess where the rest of the SEC tournament was played? Not the Georgia Dome, not Phillips Arena, but the Alexander Memorial Coliseum on the campus of Georgia Tech. Yes, Georgia Tech, an ACC team, hosted the rest of the SEC tournament. At least they got free publicity. The only time that there's ever been ACC logos with an SEC basketball tournament taking place. And somehow enough people got there. Now, to this day, people who were probably at that game, particularly fans of Big Blue Nation, I know a few of them, are probably still thinking, you know what, we should have gotten back more than all tickets. We should have gotten back our hotel money, our gas money, our food, our expenses, or whatever. Because at the Georgia Dome, SC could have, at the time, 20,000 people. Alexander Memorial Coliseum didn't hold that many. Plus, I don't think Georgia Tech was expecting to host a conference basketball tournament in the middle of March. You saw the film. I think the athletic director basically closed the building because there wasn't going to be any basketball. There wasn't going to be any big time event that the arena would be needed. So somehow, within 6, 7, 8 hours, the Coliseum went from dormant to hosting an SEC tournament. And by golly, maybe the craziest 36 hours. Yeah, 36, 40 hours the college basketball team ever played. Because if anybody's lived in Georgia, guess what? Georgia and Georgia Tech, they don't like each other. And if they played on when that game's on grass, that game is called good old fashioned hate. They hate one another. But in a weird irony, Georgia ended up getting a huge advantage. One, because actually got to play away from the dome. Two, Kentucky's fan base, which at the time was so big, particularly in Atlanta, was minimized to a few hundred fans. And the game ended up being crazy. Crazy. I mean, that Georgia team was awful. I mean, somehow they beat Ole Miss in the first round. And I think Billy Gillispie was the head coach of Kentucky after Tuppy Smith left the previous year. Let's just say Billy Gillispie was not the most well-liked coach in Lexington. Nope. And Georgia Georgia and Kentucky ended up going to overtime, which I'm sure Mississippi State loved. And yet somebody from Georgia, I think it was a walk-on, ended up hitting a three in overtime that gave Georgia the win. So Georgia pulled off maybe the biggest upset in SEC tournament history, knocked off Big Blue Nation. So did Georgia have time to rest? Hell no. Because guess what the Dogs' reward is? Play Mississippi State that night. It wasn't a situation where Georgia could go back to the hotel and play a game the next afternoon. Georgia turned around and played a game that night against Mississippi State. And obviously, I think the Georgia players got IVs because, I mean, in high school, maybe not high school, but in youth basketball, guys would play 2 or 3 games. But for a college basketball team to play 2 games in one day is something we've never seen. And not just to play 2 games in one day, but play 2 games where your season's on the line. Because if Georgia loses, they're done. They're not going to March. They're not going to the NCAA tournament. And Georgia came back and played another great game. And they beat Mississippi State. Not just playing a game against Kentucky, but playing an overtime game. And frankly, the craziest story in maybe a conference basketball tournament since probably NC State 1983 was happening. Georgia played 2 games in one day and made the championship game. And then Georgia played also. I mean, this is a fairy tale story. This is 100% fairy tale story for what Georgia did. And then Georgia played also at Georgia Tech. And if Georgia wins, doesn't matter what the record is, Georgia's going to the NCAA tournament. This was a Georgia team with like 7, 8 guys, 9 guys maybe. Not an overly deep team. And this also team was good. Stephen Davis, this was a really good all-star team. And yet Georgia, just like they did the first 2 games, came out of the blocks great, and then seemed like Georgia fatigued late first, early second. But yet the Dogs came through and showed not the heart of a champion, but the heart of a dog and champion. And pulled off the greatest 3-game triumph in 30 hours. Played 3 games in 30 hours and deservedly ended up in the NCAA tournament. It's a fairy tale story. And something to this day, I bet you those Georgia players who were there will remember. And I think Dennis Phelps was the head coach of that team, yes. And it's just crazy that in 48 hours, the SEC could go from having perfectly fine conference tournament at the Georgia Dome to Georgia playing 2 games on Saturday, 1 game on Sunday, and winning a conference tournament at Georgia Tech. If you wrote this script to a Hollywood producer, Steven Spielberg would have thrown in the Pacific Ocean. Clint Eastwood would have thrown it in the Pacific Ocean by Pebble Beach. And yet what Georgia did is probably untouched by any other team, maybe NC State in 1983. And it's like, and every time a Cinderella wins in March, it's like, could we be NC State 1983? Could we be Georgia 2008? Maybe UConn win 5 games in 5 days. And just crazy what can happen. And also, what people may not remember, a tornado hit downtown Atlanta. I mean, how does a tornado hit downtown Atlanta? And this was like an EF2 tornado. Crazy, right? A tornado hit downtown Atlanta. And actually, my brother was actually in Atlanta during the tornado. Yeah, he was at his apartment in Atlanta, about a couple miles from the Georgia Dome when it hit. Fortunately, apartment didn't get hit, but I remember seeing pictures of other hotels that were ripped. Hello, I ran on Zoe, and there were scenes from the Omni Hotel in Atlanta with all kinds of windows that were blown out. It looked like what you saw after Andrew or Katrina, one of those big hurricanes, and just crazy. I think the tornado ended up causing a couple $100 million of damage. I think it killed 1 person, but thankfully, I guess you would say the SC did the best job of improvising a conference tournament has ever done. Because how can a conference tournament go from playing a game in one venue to now playing a game here? And it's not like a lot of those people sleep. Yes, Fresno. Fresno. And, I mean, wait, hold on. The evening. Are you the bear? It's Dylan here. I'm just talking about tornadoes in sports venues. Talking about the Georgia Dome when the tornado hit the Georgia Dome in 2008. It's just nuts, right? By the way, see this stream, Driving Your Top Productions, Funky Spectrum Sports YouTube page, and the Big D 3300 on Twitch. Also my Facebook, Dylan Schmetler. I'm talking Dylan's History of Sports, how tornadoes affected sports. And so, remember the 2011 tornado in Tuscaloosa. It came really close to hitting Bryant Denny Stadium. And watching these tornadoes in 2011, I mean, we just celebrate. I mean, we just went through the 15th anniversary of the super outbreak of 2011, and seeing those tornadoes brings back a lot of bad memories. And seeing the Tuscaloosa tornado and what ultimately Joplin did brings back some memories. And seeing what Tuscaloosa could do, because you could see on the Weather Channel debris balls. And debris balls are not just debris from one system. That's actually parts of buildings coming apart and going into the tornado. You know, whether it be a roof, whether it be a window, whether it be a car, whether it be plywood. There's debris going into the tornado. And then Tuscaloosa is a heavy tornado area. They're all tornadoes. I think there's one area like Jonesboro, like somewhere in Arkansas, that's seen more than its fair share of tornadoes. Elmira, Lake City, even this year, last month. Valonia, Arkansas was hit by a tornado, I think in April 2011, and a big year 4 tornado. So yes, Valonia is the city in Arkansas that's been hit multiple times. A little like Moore, Oklahoma, with 1999, 2013, and I think there was one other year the town was hit by an F3 tornado. And we think of hurricanes here in Florida, but there's nothing stronger than one of those. And you get hit, and there's only one city. It's hard. My mom's been through a couple tornadoes. My father's been through at least one tornado. Luckily, we haven't been through tornadoes. Taken shelter a couple times. I think in a grandparents' base when we were in Nashville, Illinois, there was a tornado warning. It actually knocked out all power out of the house. But get tornadoes, and thinking back to the Moore, Oklahoma tornado, 1999. And the pictures and videos from those days. I bet you people in Oklahoma remember that tornado, and I've chatted with a couple of them in live chats or on YouTube or whatever, and seeing the pictures of that tornado, brings back memories. If anybody went through Hurricane Andrew in South Dade, or Hurricane Ian here, or Katrina, or the Moore Bridge Creek tornado. There's the holy you know what, and seeing videos of what happened there. It wasn't just a part of the roof missing, or a window blown out, or a car flipped down the road. There were often no houses standing. The tornado itself, the Moore tornado, was strong enough and wide enough that it didn't just rip off the roof. The tornado took the entire house off its foundation. And you imagine a beautiful full bedroom house. And all of a sudden, the tornado removes the house from its foundation and disperses it somewhere. And luckily, people of Oklahoma are more tornado savvy than most. A lot of them. People in Oklahoma have tornado shelters, just like in the Wizard of Oz, where have cellars, get down storm cellar, because really the only way to survive a tornado like Moore or a tornado like Greensboro, Kansas, or Xenia, Ohio, or Plainfield, Illinois, get underground. And even then, that doesn't necessarily guarantee safety, because what if a chimney goes through your roof? It goes through your house. It could go right crash into your basement and boom. But a cellar basement gives you a far better chance of surviving a tornado. You know. And what the meteorologist did that day probably saved a lot of lives, because told people, hey, I think I think sometimes with these tornadoes, meteorologists get gut feelings that, you know what, it's going to be one of those days. Is that tornadoes have a really good chance of causing a whole lot of damage and potentially taking lives. And I mean, in the Joplin tornado of 2011, it killed, well, what was it? Let me see. 158 people. And nowadays, tornadoes don't kill 158 people. But that Joplin tornado was so big, so strong, and so wide, and hit such a populated area that 158 people died, which is very unusual now. And so, I want to talk about the Greensboro, Kansas tornado 2007. It wasn't just crazy because this town was hit by an E5 tornado on this day 19 years ago. But the Greensboro, Kansas tornado ended up being the first tornado, first E5 tornado using the new enhanced Fujita scale. And luckily, people of Greensboro, Kansas got quite a bit of warning. But even then, the warning time didn't matter, and all hell broke loose for this small town in Kansas that saw more than its fair share of trouble that night. I mean, a major tornado ended up killing double digits worth of people, and to this day, to this day, I'm amazed that more people didn't die, because that tornado might have been bigger. The tornado may have been bigger than the whole town, and yet by some miracle, the death toll was lower than you would think for a tornado this size. And yeah, people could go to the basements or storm cellars, but there are also people who say, you know what, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And you never want to see a town get hit by a tornado. There's nothing prettier than seeing a beautiful hurricane in the middle of water, in the middle of nowhere, or a tornado in the middle of nowhere. But there's also nothing more dangerous than a hurricane hitting a populated area, whether it be Jamaica, whether it be the Cayman Islands, or a tornado hitting Nashville, or Dallas, or Chicago, or St. Louis, or Washington, D.C. I mean, in 2002, there was a major tornado that hit La Plata, Maryland. And I know quite a few storm chasers who've not only chased hurricanes, but chased tornadoes. And I think it was the El Reno tornado 2013, where the Weather Channel's Mike Bennett and his crew actually sucked into tornado. Their SUV was actually in the tornado. The tornado actually sucked in the SUV, and Mike Bennett and his crew when the tornado. Luckily, everybody survived, but that was one way of the trip. I think there were a few storm chasers, including El Reno. Including Tim and Paul Samaras and Carl Young. And these guys were not the adrenaline storm chasers. They were actually the scientists helping. These men were actually the scientists trying to learn more and help with tornado research. These were not the adrenaline junkies. And just tragic, because the weather community lost great heroes. And the El Reno tornado turned out to be one of the widest in history. So just crazy what weather can do, whether it be a hurricane, whether it be a tornado, and showing what weather can do. I mean, even buildings that you would think would be perfectly safe turn into you know what. I mean, who would think that the Superdome's roof would fall off in a hurricane, or the Georgia Dome would have damage in the middle of a conference basketball tournament? But you know what? Expect the unexpected. Expect it. I mean, I'm not saying a tornado is going to hit downtown LA during the next Super Bowl or whatever, but crazier things have happened. And I wanted to do something different. I wanted to talk not just about my love of sports, but talk about, how tornadoes have affected sports. I mean, excuse me. Maybe we need storm sirens here. I mean, yeah, there are storm sirens throughout the country, particularly in the Midwest, but here, hurricanes are more of an issue than tornadoes. But as Kevin Garnett said one time, anything's possible. So, different episode tonight. Yes, I'm not talking Stanley Cup final. I'm not talking Kentucky Derby or what's happened in other sports, but talking tornadoes and sports. So I hope you enjoyed it, and when you're done, like this stream, whether it be on Facebook, Twitch, Driving the Top Productions, or Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. But this is the Big D signing off for now.